Starting 11, I am Will West alongside my partner in fashion crime, Mr. Chris Carroll. Here's what we do. Every single Monday at 3:05, we give you the top 11 topics in the world of soccer, association football, whatever you would like to call it in your locale. Chris, how are you today, man?
Yeah, I'm great. Thanks, Will. How you doing, mate?
Doing well, doing better. Spurs could be better. That's not going particularly well. Wolves took a loss as well. If you don't know, I am a longtime Spurs fan all the way back to 2015 when Americans got to watch the EPL. Chris is a lifelong Wolves fan growing up in Wolverhampton in England.
Yeah, I put the kiss of death on them 2 weeks ago, didn't I? But to back them, but I don't know what I was thinking. But yeah, very, very up and down. But yeah, that's the life of a Wolves fan.
Look, you're still there. You're mid-tabled right now. The problem is mid-table to 20th is like 4 points between the two, right? So
I know, so, crazy.
So what do? All right, so here's what we do. We do the top 11 topics in the world of soccer. We do it every single Monday at 3:05. Take more of an EPL bend because the EPL is the top league in the world. And let's break it down and go ahead and start with number one, Chris. All right, point number one, Antonio Conte went nuts during his post-match press conference at Spurs tied with Southampton, blew a 3-1 lead. I turned it on, got home from running some errands and things like that, turned it on right as the third goal was scored for Spurs, and then it just all went to pot from there. Chris, do you think Conte's trying to get fired? Because I saw Troy Deeney, I saw Jamie Carragher both say they think he's trying to get fired during this international break. Are you buying that?
You know what? It is crazy, isn't it? What a guy! It's one of two things. He's either trying to get fired, or he loves Spurs that much. It's his last resort. He's trying tough love. He's just saying it like it is, and he hopes Daniel Levy listens to him, and all the players listen to him, and you know he's taking no responsibility for this whatsoever for himself. So he's either a tough love route or he's trying to get out there with a bit of payoff before the summer. He's got to know that he can't get away with this, or this surely he's not going to. Surely and the timing as well over an international break. He talk about go ahead and fire me if you dare, you know. And I think that's the only outcome of this. I don't know about you as a Spurs fan, but my life, I mean, it's a sure way to get yourself fired.
I will say this. There's nothing he said that was inaccurate, though. That's the tough part, right? But we don't always, you don't walk into a nursing home and tell everyone they look old, right? That's not, just because it's honest doesn't mean that you should say it. Yeah. And so Antonio Conte said the quiet part out loud. But the things he said, every Spurs fan has been saying for years, right? And he's absolutely right. Under Levy, last 20 years, under this ownership, you bring another manager in, same exact results, send them away. So bring another manager, same exact results, send them away. They don't spend. They've wasted having the best player in England in this generation, the best English player of this generation by a country miles, Harry Kane. They wasted having him during this time, haven't surrounded him with anyone. Look at that back four right now. I mean, how many Premier League clubs, how many top half of the table clubs, and I love this dude, would have Eric Dyer as a center half right now, right? I mean, there just aren't any. And Sarr, when you have the penalty that's that controversial and it doesn't even look like you touched him, that set up the third goal for Southampton, and he didn't even argue his point or fight it or anything like that. He just, and moved on. It does seem like this team doesn't care. It does seem like this team's not responding to Conte, and Conte's made mistakes. Don't get me wrong. They did spend $150 million to bring in players that Conte wanted. But everything Conte said is accurate. One, I don't know that he's trying to get fired. I just think it's one of those, I don't care if I do get fired. I'm just going to tell the truth because I don't want to look bad, and this is going to look bad on me, and it is going to look bad on him. But he'll get a job in Italy that quickly and be successful in Italy with a team that wants to spend and with an ownership that wants to spend and players that want to play for something. But I do think you have players at Spurs right now who just think, it is what it is. And Levy's fine as long as NFL teams keep coming into his stadium, pouring money into his pocket because of what a great stadium he has and because of how high profile his club is. So I don't think he's trying to get fired, but I don't think he cares if he does get fired because all that happens there is you pay him and he goes and makes money somewhere else.
Yeah, and quite honestly, he doesn't need the money, does he? And he will get a job the day after. I suppose what is refreshing about him, And I'm always wary about when he uses certain words because it's not his first language. Kind of give him a break. Is that really what he means? Or does he know he should say that bluntly? But you get so many managers in the after game interviews, and they say, "Well, we've got something to build on. We're going to take the positives away, and there are positives. We'll build, and kick on is the phrase." Well, he's none of that, is he? He's just saying it like as you say, as a Spurs fan, that's what you all know. Nothing that he's said is he's made up, and but it's kind of like you can say it, but an outsider can't say it, or it really hits home when an outsider does say it, especially the manager, and especially when he's saying it about the guy who pays his salary as well. Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think he does care if he gets fired or not. It's probably the last roll of the dice. Maybe a bit of this say it like it is. This tough love is the last resort. Can't see Levy really listening to him though and getting swayed by him. To be honest, and I don't know. He never has before. But yeah, and Spurs is a strange one because it depends which way you're looking at it. Spurs fans, and you as a Spurs fan, Will, you're so close to winning things, and everyone else looking up at where Spurs are. As a Wolves fan, you look and you think, what's the crisis about? They're fourth place, they're going to qualify for the Champions League, but I get it. They're not fulfilling the potential, all the size of the club, the money that the club's got. Should be doing a lot better. And Conte though hasn't sort of covered himself in glory and how he's worked with the team and got the best out of the team and improved them and changed things. And it just a lot of his management techniques or the style of play just hasn't endeared himself either to the fan base. So if he does get fired, does anybody really care? Have Spurs fallen in love with him at all? I'm guessing not.
No, not at all. Not at all. I'll be honest. He's made a ton of mistakes as well, and he's part of the problem, not the solution. I do think if you spent like Chelsea or City or Liverpool, I think the Conte could be a part of the solution, but you brought in very specific players that he wanted that haven't meshed yet. And maybe it's too quick to expect them to mesh where, mid-March, and these guys just came in at the end of the January transfer window. So they shouldn't expect to just hit the ground running and be playing like gangbusters. But Conte's playing guys in the wrong spots. He is. And he's dealt with injuries. I get that. But it's tough when, look, here's the thing if you're a Spurs fan. You know that you're a big club, but you don't spend like a big club. And so you have Harry Kane, you have Son, you have world-class players, and you just don't surround them with anybody. So you're spending like Aston Villa. And I know I mentioned that a million times here, but you are. You're closer to Aston Villa spending than Liverpool spending. You added 70 to 80 million pounds more of spending to what this current Spurs squad has. You shore up 3 or 4 positions in their starting 11. You add 2 or 3 guys to the bench. You feel a lot better about where they're at. But it isn't as if, look, Arsenal doesn't spend a ton either, but they have a ton of guys in their academy, and they brought up a ton of guys that are young. Spurs aren't young, and who's the last guy that came up from the academy? You go from Kane to Skip. That's pretty much what you come from. So, and Skip's not that great right now. But so look, Conte has not endeared. I'm not sold on the fact that Conte's a world beater and you just haven't given him enough, but they haven't given him enough at that. I just also think he still wouldn't have done what he needed to do had you given him enough. But it doesn't matter who you are, Daniel Levy. He's not going to spend. And I've seen a lot of fans put it this way, especially Arsenal fans, and they're right. Spurs are a corporation. They're not a club. And as long as Levy continues to make profits, that's really all he cares about at the end of the day. Point number 2, Chris, the FA Cup. We had FA Cup ties this weekend. Is the FA Cup still important?
It is to me. And it depends, I think, what perhaps how old you are, how long you've been around, how long you've been watching English football. The FA Cup used to be, first of all, it's the oldest cup competition in the world. And in England, back before you had every live game on the television, you could pick your game, etc. It used to be the one live game a year, and the country stopped. It was kind of like the Super Bowl over here, but it was on television all day, and it just took over everything. And now it's not so important in terms of the money, and in terms, it's not a novelty to see a live game. But to everybody, probably except for the top 4 clubs in the country, maybe top top 5 clubs in the country who keep winning it. It's a chance to win silverware. It's a chance to qualify for Europe outside of the normal, get into the Premier League and finish 5th. So it's the fairy tales. It's the fairy tale opportunity of a team from outside of the national league, outside of the football league, your national teams to come up and play against one of the big boys, beat them, cup upsets. Over the years, over the decades, there's been fantastic cup upsets. There's been fantastic finals. And so, for those teams, it's really, really important. It's a good money earner, revenue builder, and it's just a fantastic competition with lots and lots of history. If you've just started watching soccer in the last 5 or 10 years, perhaps it doesn't mean anything, and you don't have those memories, and you don't see the bigger picture on how important it is to the smaller clubs, because there's a huge now divide financially between your top 6s and everyone else. There are less upsets than there used to be, but upsets like Sunderland beating Leeds in the 70s, and just memories like that. And you've got a good memory coming up now in the semi-final at Brighton, Manchester United in the 1983 Cup final. Brighton got relegated. High-flying Man United were playing them in the Cup final, and Brighton eked out. It looked like Brighton got a 2-2 draw, and Man United thumped in the replay. But nevertheless, it's a good memory. Brighton came so close to upsetting Man United. But so lots of memories, lots of nostalgia. Why get rid of it? If you don't want to play it because you've got too many games, don't play in it. But let everybody else enjoy it for what it is. There you go.
Yeah, I think it's important. I still think it's important for the reasons that you said. To the fan, let's be honest, to the international fan base, it's, North America, Asia, it's not as big of a deal. I mean, of course, Champions Leagues, your domestic League 1, Champions League 2, depending on the league you're in, maybe that's not even the most important, really. If you're in France, probably Champions League 1, domestic League 2, if you're a PSG fan. But it's still important because of what it means to the pyramid. We know people on the ownership side, of a League 2 team, and that makes a huge difference for them to be able to win a match they weren't expected to in the FA Cup and be able to play one of the big boys in the EPL, and it really helped finance that club to help maybe bring on players during the summer window so they can try to get a promotion next year. It really matters to those fan bases as well. Look at what happened with Wrexham when they were playing for a chance to be able to advance in the FA Cup, and the entire nation's, even in the U.S., is paying attention on their random weekday to what Ryan Reynolds and his team are doing there. And that's a big deal, and that still matters. Now, at the same time, it is diminished, right? It's not what it used to be. Like last year, Liverpool won. Do you remember off the top of your head who Liverpool played?
I haven't got a clue.
Yeah, Chelsea. That's and I watched it, and I don't remember, and I didn't remember without looking it up today. Do you remember who won 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm. No.
Leicester.
There you go.
Leicester City. So
Okay.
it's just it doesn't matter the way that it used to matter, but that doesn't mean that it's not important still, in my opinion, Chris, because it gives hope to. It's kind of like the NCAA tournament, like it domestically in the U.S. When you know that when a 16 beats a 1, because we just had Fairleigh Dickinson knock off Purdue. That's not something that's happened twice in history. It's not something that's going to happen often, and they're not going to win the whole thing. But man, what an incredible moment when they do win, and what an incredible moment for those kids and for all of us in the nation watching them play on Friday night as that was happening. You could all get behind the small team. The same thing happens in the FA Cup, and you don't want to lose those moments. Otherwise, why not just go to the Super League, right?
Oh, that's right. That's right. You might as well just scrap all tradition and just start again. Yeah, and cut the bottom of the pyramid off. And like you said, the lower league clubs, they survive. It can literally be the difference between survival and going out of business. A good run in the FA Cup, and there's so many memories built. There's so many legacies built. Guys have got famous. Hereford. People still talk about the day that Hereford beat Newcastle in the 70s. Hereford were non-league. Newcastle flying in the Premier League that was, and Hereford did it on a muddy field. There was no nice fields back in the day. Muddy field, and a screamer from 30 yards won it. There's just so many memories like that, and I think just to wipe off the tradition, even though it doesn't mean so much prize money is next to nothing. It's just, and it's a chance to win silverware. I mean, as a Wolves fan, I'd love Wolves to win. You know, it's a day out for the fans at Wembley to see Wolves lift a trophy. It's fantastic. It's another. It's an option for all the teams that don't get that outside the top four that win everything. At least it's a glimmer of hope for everybody else.
All right, point number 4, Chris. Point number 3, Chris. The relegation battle right now. If you look at Crystal Palace in 12th place, they're only 4 points above Southampton in 20th place right now. That's how close this thing is. So if I had to put your foot to the fire, how does this shake out? Who gets relegated?
It's amazing, isn't it? Unbelievable. It's 3 from 9. And you often bring a couple in who, if they go on a bad run, they could get sucked into it. But yeah, 3 out of those 9, 3 points separating them from the relegation zone. So it genuinely is 3 from 9. Palace, who are the sort of best place out of those 9, they're plummeting. They haven't won all year. And you got teams like Leicester who have just dropped into the zone, haven't won in. I don't think they've won in 5 games. Their run of form doesn't look good for them. The rest, though, are really fighting, and every week this changes. So if you asked me 2 weeks ago, the 3 is going to be different to what it is now. It's really so hard to predict. And then you look at who's got who over the next coming weeks, and you can't predict that either. You might as well, throw that out the window, the form book, because there is no form book at the moment. So I'm basing this on current form, if you like. Well, outside of Bournemouth, I just don't see Bournemouth escaping, even though they've got a couple of wins out the last 6 games. They keep eking points. But I can't imagine that there's going to be 3 big teams go down. There's always one minnow, and I've got Bournemouth finishing bottom. So hold my feet to the fire here. I got Leicester going now because of the run they're on, and the other team that got no wins in 6 is Forest. Now I got Forest falling in there as well. So as a Wolves fan, it's the only comfort I've got is that there's 9 or 8 of the teams just as bad as Wolves at the moment, but it could be quite conceivably Wolves, because all those teams down there, they just can't score. But at least some are putting up a fight, and the ones who are sliding, like I say, are Leicester and Forest. I got Bournemouth in there as well. So yeah, I got Bournemouth, Leicester, and Forest. Will.
Wait, okay, so I think Southampton and Forest still go, or Southampton and Bournemouth still go. So Those are the bottom 2 right now. I think it stays that way. Southampton they don't look that was just Spurs, casual. We're up 3-1, and so now we can just coast and we don't have to do anything. Leicester's last win was against Spurs, kind of the same thing. They jump out to a lead and then whatever. Next thing you know, it's 4-1. So that was a little bit of a fluke, I think, with Southampton over the weekend. So I still think Southampton, Bournemouth, and I think it's Leicester as well. I just don't see how this thing turns around. They don't have. If you look at it's something you brought up a couple of months ago, and there aren't enough number 9s to go around. So who is invested in their midfield and wings and guys that can score from there? And right now, Leicester might have the slowest midfield in the EPL. And when that is the case, and they can't create a ton from that midfield, I just don't know how Leicester's going to get goals, especially because Jamie Vardy's a shell of, it's just, it's over. Father Time's undefeated. And so Jamie Vardy's not going to be able to do a whole lot for you anymore. Iheanacho I like, but he's not the answer there. So because of their issues in midfield, because I just don't know where the goals are going to come from, and I think they're the weakest of those teams. When I look at Wolves, they have wing options, they have midfield options. When I look at Everton, if Calvert-Lewin gets healthy, I think that changes everything for Everton, right? They need somebody to score. That's their problem there. But they're fantastic at the back, I think Everton is, and they're pretty good in the midfield. They need to not make dumb mistakes, but I do believe that they'll get all that worked out. Sean Dyche will get that worked out by the time we get to the end of the season. The 2 clubs, though, that I'm most concerned about that I haven't mentioned there, West Ham plays everybody at the top of the table between now and the end of the season, and West Ham is a team that's currently in relegation territory. You think West Ham survives, though, Chris?
Well, I do, only because they've got a bit of quality, and from last year where we're pretty much the same squad. They've got it in them, and so they've got some experience to get out of it, I think. And the record isn't great, but they're getting points here and there. Their recent record, but they're getting points here and there, and that's why I think Southampton have got 2 wins. They got 2 wins in the last 6, and a draw here and there as well. So they're showing some fight. There's a couple that, like I say, Leicester, like you say, they just seem to be sliding away. But I think, I think West Ham have just got enough. They're just enough fight in them, enough experience in them to get out of it. Yeah, I do.
But the one thing I will say, you look at West Ham, you look at Everton, it's hard to think they're going to go down because they have world-class players and the other teams don't have world-class players, right? Wolves have a couple of world-class players, and the teams don't have world-class players. So Forest is that's a good pick. I think that's a very good pick. If we're just looking at talent level, Forest probably is in the bottom 3 in the EPL right now. Man, I just don't see what the answer is for Leicester. And so it may end up being Southampton or Forest, which one goes down, and you could end up being right at the end of the day. Point number 4, Chris, Arsenal. Do they have the depth to hold off City? I guess City has a match in hand, and what is it, sitting at 8 right now? Is that what the number is? But we've questioned whether Arsenal was going to have depth down the stretch. I think it's why both of us picked City to win the EPL even 3 weeks ago. But man, their depth really has shown out the last couple of weeks with the injuries that they're dealing with.
It really has. And I noticed, I watched a bit of the game yesterday, and they made the subs, and the subs that came on was Tierney at the back, and he chased down Zaha, I think it was. He was just like lightning. He got a one-on-one almost. So Tierney comes on. He's a good fullback. Jesus comes on, coming back from injury. Smith Rowe, he's gaining experience. Jorginho, and then they got a Polish centre back that they gave some time to, a new guy, Kivior or someone like that. But so that 6 months ago or 12 months ago, they had nothing like that bench, and that bench came on, nothing changed. Now I know they were up, and it was against Crystal Palace who was struggling, but nevertheless, I think most of us have been saying they haven't got the depth to hang in there, and when they get injuries, then we're going to see then they'll fall away. Well, they've had a few injuries, and Jesus coming back now. They just seem to be all in it together now, and I think. I'm not sure if they're gonna go all the way still, but the spirit looks fantastic, and the depth is there, and I've got way more faith. I wouldn't be surprised now if they did. I would have been very surprised even a month ago if they'd have won the Premier League, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're winning now.
Yeah, they're surviving this thing, and a lot of that is the depth is interesting to me, Chris. We talked about this yesterday just on the phone. It's interesting because it's just guys that are solid veterans that are coming off the bench, that are the reserves that have played really, really well for them. And what happens is your quality doesn't drop that far when you have guys like that. And so if you look at the injuries that they have right now, and Nketiah is out. He was struggling anyway. So I don't know that you necessarily lose a ton, whether it's Trossard or it's Jesus.
Yeah.
Either way, you don't lose a lot, but that's 3 guys at a forward position right now that you can start and feel pretty comfortable with. Even if you have to take them out, you feel comfortable with who's coming in there. There aren't enough forwards to go around right now in the EPL. So the fact that you have 3 that you feel comfortable with, even though 2 of those have dealt with injury issues this year, very nice job bringing on Trossard during the transfer window, I think, by their management as well. And then you have Saliba who's hurt, and you have Tommy who's hurt. And they're not only are they surviving it, they're thriving. I do think if we get down to 6 points, and it could be a 6-point swing, so, you know what I mean? And there's somehow, some way, if City can pull that off, if they're able to beat Arsenal when they play later on next month, that could be the difference maker in this one. But right now, the concern I had for Arsenal was I know City has depth. I know the World Cup being in November is going to play a part in this, and we're going to see some injuries around. And I just don't know if Arsenal's depth can hold up. Arsenal's depth is holding up right now. And now you have the international break where guys are going to get rested as well. And you see some guys that will probably come back from that and be able to, and that team's going to be even stronger because now you've gotten playing time and you've gotten a chance to build a chemistry with some of these veterans that you've added to the club.
You're right. And you mentioned a guy to me yesterday, Granit Xhaka. I mean, what a transformation he is. He was good for a red card, let alone a goal or an assist. He was just good for a red card every game. He completely lost it. He looked like a liability. I think the fans had turned on him, and they were ready to see him out of the club. This guy's just like, he's transformed himself, and he looks like a leader on the field. He's at the center of everything. Yeah, he looks like he's enjoying himself when he's playing out there now. So yeah, it's just the more experienced guys like him, the youth. It's all gelled. The coach, they've all bought into his philosophy, and they all look like they're just on the same page, and it's great. Oh, I've got to say, it's great watching them now. It's it's good to watch not just Manchester City. There's someone else that's great to watch on a regular basis, and yeah, it's all coming together at the right time for them.
And let's be honest, look, as a Spurs fan, just Arsenal fans, I don't like you, but I must admit, it's cool to see the way that they built this team, because this was a manager that everybody was decrying and wanted gone. They stuck by him, and it paid off for them, right? They already have silver with them with the FA Cup win a couple years ago, and they built with a young squad of players that have been there for a while. They brought on aging veterans to add chemistry and things like that. They were willing to let Aubameyang and Lacazette go when they were malcontents. They've done all the things that I think we as fans say that we want to see our teams do. Arsenal's done it that way. And so there's part of me that wants to see them get rewarded for building the team the way that they have built the team.
They've transformed it. I don't know if it's how long ago, 12 months. It's not much more than that. Maybe inside that. They were a right mess. It was a complete mess. And the fans they wanted to get rid of Arteta, and nothing was working. Aubameyang, like you say, was causing trouble, and it just looked like they were just going to get worse, a lot worse, before they even started to get better. And it happened relatively quickly, but he got rid of the bad apples in there and gave everybody an opportunity, I think, and he's put his faith in them. And you can really see it paying off, because the way they're playing is fantastic, and the spirit in the team is wonderful. Right through from the Ramsdale, a fantastic goalkeeper. I think he's a great keeper, a great character, and any championship winning team or Premier League winning team has to have a fantastic, strong goalkeeper behind him, and he's having a great season as well. So from the back to front, they're looking fantastic.
All right, point number 5, Chris. Greg Berhalter. A lot came out about the Gio Reyna and Reyna's family and Greg Berhalter last week. Berhalter was cleared to be able to come back and coach the U.S. men's national team. So I'll ask you, should Greg Berhalter be able to come back to the U.S. men's national team?
Well, if you did ask me right after the World Cup, we talked about this, and straight after the World Cup, I was all for no, let's make a change. But because of what's happened, because of how he's been, I think it's been really cheap. It was a real cheap shot for the Rainers to have a go at his character and bring something up from 30 years ago that he'd obviously put right and he owned up to, and isn't an issue now. I think it was really dirty of them to do that, and really low. So now I would say I've changed. I've changed my philosophy. I don't think it's fair that someone should be hounded out for non-soccer reasons by a family of a player that he wasn't playing. And maybe he could have handled that player better at the World Cup. But that's not the point now. If you can get hounded out, if you're going to fire people because of what families having a vendetta against you, then that's really that's really low, and that shouldn't happen. So I would say no, let him go. Let him stay in there, and then just judge him on soccer, on his soccer results and how that goes. Let's put all that behind us. I think they've embarrassed themselves and that Reyna family. And yeah, I feel sorry for the guy now, and let him go. Let him build on what they did in the World Cup. Hopefully.
Look, I will say this. Here's the problem. What happened with Greg Berhalter was 30 plus years ago. He and his wife have made amends, and he put his hands on his wife in a way that he shouldn't have. And he owned up to it when asked about it. He absolutely owned up to it, right? I mean, he said, yes, I did it, and it was wrong, and I shouldn't have done it. And my wife and I have worked through that. And again, it was 30 years ago. But let's be very real. If I am a U.S. men's national team fan, we all were okay with him going away because he's not good enough. He was never qualified for the job, and you will never reach your potential as long as you continue to allow the Greg Berhalters of the world to be the coach of the U.S. men's national team. And so at this point, you probably are going to bring him back and have to bring him back. Christian Pulisic said this weekend, hey, it was youth league stuff that happened. And it was my kid's not going to get enough playing time. So let me air dirty laundry that happened 30 years ago that you made amends for. Let me air that out publicly so that you can lose your job so that my kid gets more playing time because I'm unhappy. And it was childish and it should not have happened that way. But at the end of the day, Greg Berhalter should have never been the manager of the U.S. men's national team. He should have never been the coach. He's never been particularly good. He's been a mid-level MLS coach at best is what he was. If he wanted to be an assistant coach on the team, that's fine. You know, if you want to have that kind of MLS presence that's there. But this is the problem with the U.S. men's national team. And I'll just say it for U.S. men's soccer as a whole. And I'm going to jump on a soapbox for a second, Chris. Look at where right now you're allowing the MLS to virtually run this. And Berhalter's brother, when he got the job, was the chief marketing officer for the MLS, for U.S. Soccer, and now he's working with the MLS. That's why Greg Berhalter got this job, not because of anything that he's done as far as being a manager. He's look at where the MLS is, especially if you're going to allow the MLS to run the U.S. men's national team the way that you have. The MLS, according to one metrics ranking that I found, the 15th strongest league in the world, 15th strongest. Wow. How do you expect to play well when you're going to let that league run everything that you do? In 538's analytics rankings, they rank every single team in international soccer. You know, the highest ranked U.S. team is LAFC at 105. That's it. Like, that's just, and think about this. If you're a manager right now, would you rather manage at the back end of League Two? Like, Forest Green is the last team at the end of League One. Would you rather be the manager of Forest Green, or would you rather be the manager of an MLS squad right now? And the answer is you'd rather be the manager of Forest Green. So it's just so why are you letting this league continue to run things? And that's and I'll be honest, as a U.S. men's national team fan, as an American, I was okay with this being the thing that got him out of there, not because I thought the way it went down was right, but because he's not very good. And you'll never reach your potential as long as Greg Berhalter's there. And unfortunately, it's like it has to be one or the other. It's either, well, Greg Berhalter, what happened to him was wrong, so now he's the guy and let's all get behind him, or no, Greg Berhalter, he put his hands on his wife 30 years ago. He needs to be out of here. I think the truth is of the matter is we all know that what was happening with the Reina family and Greg Berhalter wasn't right. But we were okay with him leaving that way because it meant he was leaving. And maybe you would go hire a manager that's qualified to have the job.
Yeah, I mean, the Rainers may have shot themselves in the foot because he may have been fired anyway after the World Cup. They didn't have time to have the inquest, did they? And this came out, you know, so he may well have gone anyway, and they may well have found a manager who was better suited, better qualified from world soccer somewhere, who's got experience in stronger league soccer. So yeah, I mean, you're exactly right to have the MLS. I mean, we all know the shortcomings of the MLS and the way it's structured and how your best players are going to Europe. Best American players now are going to Europe to play in the European leagues. And then the guys who have come to the end of their career in Europe are coming over here for one last hurrah. And I say here, I'm in the States now, and I'm now a US citizen. I'm a dual citizen as well. So I've got skin in the game here as well. I'm a US men's national team fan too. So I want to see them get as strong as I can. But I just didn't like the way it went down, and I would prefer him to be given his chance. If the signs weren't good after the World Cup, and if it continued that way, it won't be long anyway before there's a change. But I just wouldn't like the Rainers to think that, and future Rainers in the world, you know, whoever they are, to think that they can have some say in getting somebody fired over what happened 30 years ago. I think that was really cheap.
Because you didn't give your son enough playing time. This is something that wouldn't happen in high school athletics, much less do you allow this to happen at the U.S. men's national team level. Point number 6, Chris, Lionel Messi. Now, there are new rumors that Messi could be going to the EPL. Apparently, he wants $30 million to $35 million, depending on the outlet, to stay at PSG. His contract is up at the end of the year. PSG wants him to take less to be able to get under financial fair play regulations. There have been reports out of France that Messi is asked to only play in large matches because he knows, hey, at 36 years of age, my body may not hold up to play an entire season, including, European competitions and things like that. So there's a lot of talk that now Messi's going to go to the EPL. There was a belief he spends one more year in France and then he would come to the MLS, kind of David Beckham, Wayne Rooney style. What do you think happens with Lionel Messi now with his career? He still has something that's in the tank, right? 13 goals, 13 assists. Do you think we'll finally see Messi go to the EPL, maybe with City and his boy Pep?
It'd be great, wouldn't it? In my opinion, it'd be fantastic if he did. I'm not sure he's going to be going to the MLS anytime soon. Although he can't wait too long. His rumors were that he's a big family guy, and they were all settled in. Well, they're in Spain and sort of France now, but so he didn't really want to move far afield from them. If he's talking about going to the States, or if he's talking about going to the States, that's obviously a much further distance that he's got to uproot his family or just go without them for a season or whatever. So he's more likely to go to the Premier League than the MLS. For a selfish reason, personal preference, it'd be great to see him play in the Premier League. And I think, probably most of the public would love to see him play in the Premier League because it's supposed to be one of the toughest leagues in the world, now. And by tough, it's a lot more physical. So would he want to get kicked about in the Premier League or potentially get kicked around in the Premier League for the last couple of years of his career? I don't know. He could get looked after. It'd be fantastic. I could see him playing for Man City. I mean, just slot him in there with Haaland and the rest, and there wouldn't be a bad team, would they? And if because of his friendship there, like you say, that's where I could see him going. Who knows? Really, it'd be fantastic to see him have a season in the Premier League, season or two, because I would imagine I imagine he'd need to bed in, but I mean, Messi can play at any level, anywhere, can't he? And if they looked after him, he could certainly get a season under his belt. But yeah, it'd be fantastic. I think it's more likely there than moving all the way to the States at the moment.
Look, in sport, we want to see the best play the best, and Messi's the best, right? Maybe he's the greatest of all time. He's at least the greatest that I've seen, and he's never played against the best, right? He's never played in the top league. The EPL's the top league, point blank. I mean, I know he just won the World Cup, so I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but that's what we want to see is him take on the best in the EPL. But I'll ask you this question, Chris: who's going to pay Messi what you could pay Kevin De Bruyne right now? The same, like he would be the highest paid player probably in the EPL. Who's going to make him the highest paid player in the EPL right now? There are teams that can do that, but are they willing to do it? And can Messi give you enough to make it worthwhile? I think you'll make enough money off of Messi to make it worthwhile, but I don't know from a competition standpoint. Is he going to be? I mean, are you really going to give him 35 million pounds a year to be able to play? Or 10 million pounds more per year than you're paying Kevin De Bruyne right now? Are you really going to give him that at 36 years of age when even he's saying, maybe I need some type of load management where I don't play in these matches and I do play in these matches? If it's not City, then who is it? That's going to be the one question that I have do you see United doing this? Because I don't know if I see United doing this. Although if they get taken over, then there's a lot of talk that there's a takeover bid coming this summer. And then if that happens, then maybe they do bring Messi in. Can you see Arsenal doing this? Because they are spending far less than the Chelseas, the Liverpools, and the Uniteds of the world. So do you see Arsenal doing this and adding him to the fold with Saka there? I just don't know that I see that happening as well. I know Spurs aren't going to spend to bring him in. So it's either City decides they want to spend to bring him in, or is there really anybody else that you look at? I can't help but
Newcastle.
wonder if Newcastle, that's true. Would he go to Newcastle, or is that a big enough club? It's a big club, but is it a big enough profile club for Messi and his family? That's one thing I wonder.
It's a big enough club financially now because they could afford him, but he'd need to get instant results, wouldn't he? He'd want to get instant success, and that'd be the drawback about going to Newcastle. I wonder if Man City whether it all hinges on if Man City win the Champions League this year. If they didn't, maybe they bring him in and use him sparingly to try and get him over that line. One last try for Pep to win the Champions League. If they win it, then perhaps they don't need him. They wouldn't push the boat out to get him. Or the Newcastle give him some promises, and he wants to be part of that legacy, because he wouldn't have to be a hero in Newcastle if he went there. My life, they'd worship him. So yeah, there's an outside chance of Newcastle, but other than that, City it would be the favorite bet. Yeah,
I think it's going to go to the MLS. I think they're going to do the same thing they did for Beckham, and they're going to change the rules to be able to make sure that he goes. And I think he'll absolutely crush the MLS because he's still playing. Again, if you're Look, France isn't the same as playing in England, but it's better than playing in the MLS. And if he's at 13 goals, 13 assists there, my gosh, what could he do in the MLS next year? So I think he goes to the MLS, and I think they do something similar to what they did for Beckham. Beckham, they allowed him to purchase an expansion club for $25 million. And they made that deal when he came to England. St. Louis just had to pay $200 million for a club. So I think that Messi would be willing to do something like that. And I think to work out some kind of deal that gets all of that done. All right, let's talk about Messi's teammate, Kylian Mbappe, because there are new rumors this week as well. And his uncle has even said the best place for him is to going to the EPL. He reportedly turned down a move to Liverpool last summer. Do you think Kylian Mbappe will ever play at the EPL?
Possibly. I mean, he's had this sort of on-off love affair with Real Madrid, hasn't he? So he looked favourite to go to Spain. But I think he's upset him with that, with deciding not to. And so maybe that's off the table now. And again, it'd be fantastic. Like you say, you want to see the best playing against the best, not just in the Champions League, but every week. And again, there's a couple of three teams who could afford him, depending on who. Well, Manchester United, if they get sold, I could see him going there. And I could see him going, well, I don't know about Man City. It depends on what Messi does. But can you imagine both of those coming next year? Oh, a couple of signings. But yeah, he's 24, I believe, and his contract's. I think his contract's up at the end of next year, not this coming year. But he's got one more season to go in France. You're not ripping up trees, are you? If you're winning titles in France, and so I think surely from a professional point of view. If you were him, you'd want to go and play in the best league that you can amongst the best players and challenge yourself. So again, it'll be fantastic. Who knows? Hard to know really. He's not too open with it. He doesn't give too much away in interviews and the like. And so it's hard to know. But it would be fantastic if he did.
Yeah, I think he would have been in Madrid last time, if not for Macron, the French president, stepping in and other members of parliament stepping in to keep him there. And so he did sign a 3-year deal. So PSG can kind of set their price of what they want to do with Mbappe. And the last time the price was set, it was 400 million euros. Now the thought's 350 million euros. If you're Liverpool, if you're Chelsea, if you're United, are you dropping 350 million euros to have a 24-year-old, going to be 25-year-old Kylian Mbappe added to your squad?
Oh, I'm smiling. I'm just thinking of Messi and Mbappe pitching up at Newcastle. I mean, wouldn't that be something?
That would be incredible.
Yeah.
So, and there's even a belief that Neymar wants to go there as well. So it looks like PSG has financial fair play issues, and and at this point they're just paying a lot of guys to be there, and they're dominating that league, and maybe not to the extent that they should be. So they're going to sell these guys and try to build it a different way. But right, if you have to rank those, Neymar, Mbappe, Messi, what order would you want them for? If Wolves was able to spend the money and have a chance, in what order would you want them?
Well, Wolves need someone to stick the ball in the net, so it'd have to be Mbappe. He's banging them in on a regular basis, isn't he? More regular. So Mbappe, Messi, and then Neymar, because Neymar's just so unpredictable and a bit volatile and emotional. I think that he'd be at the. We'd still take him at Wolves though, but he'd be the third pick.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. And it's just because I really enjoy rooting against Neymar, so I don't want him to. If he's on my team, I have to pull for him, and nobody's trying to see that. Do you think anybody comes off of, let's say, 350 million euros for Mbappe this year?
Do I think anyone would come in for him?
Yeah, well, will anybody pay 350 million euros in a transfer fee for him?
Oh yeah, I think they would. I think I mean, he's got a good. I mean, he's got a good 4 or 5 years left in him. Surely, it doesn't seem like he's been around too long. But I guess mid-20s now. But yeah, I could see that. And I've joked about Newcastle. Not joked, but I mean, what a transformation it would. But there's teams like that could. If it's packaged the right way for him, that and with not knowing his personality, he'd certainly be the main guy up there, I tell you, and he'd be absolutely worshipped up there. The same would go for Messi up in Newcastle. So yeah, there's oil money maybe coming into Manchester United now as well. So by the end of this season, you could have Man United, Man City, Newcastle, all really capable of dropping that kind of money.
Point number 8, Chris. All right. So there are 3 kind of clubs that have been in the EPL for a while now that are kind of battling in that relegation territory situation. Leicester City, West Ham, Everton. Which of those 3 clubs are you the most worried about, or should be the most worried about relegation this year?
For me, it'd be Everton, because they haven't experienced relegation since 1952, I think it is. They've been in the top flight that long. They're just been a staple of English soccer, the top of English soccer. Leicester, West Ham, kind of up and down. More recent, they've been around for a few years now. I think West Ham last time they were down was 2011, or they came back up. So they were relegated they came back up 2011. Leicester 2008. So relatively recently, although they've been in the Premier League for quite a while now as well. But Everton haven't experienced that, and it can take decades to get back. If you go down, it could take you forever to get back. And I think that with the situation that Everton are in, the fans are absolutely against the ownership. The team isn't full of stars, hence they're in the situation where they're at now. So they may have trouble getting back up. They're not playing a fantastic style of football, particularly. They're having to dog it out there and scrap for every point they can get. And they may have trouble getting back because there's trouble at the top, and it's not just on the field. The other 2 teams, it would be like, well, here we go again, and they're used to it. They can bounce back. They've proved they can bounce back. Everton, I think it would just be a huge culture shock all the way through the club. And I think if they went down, I could see them dropping even lower before they got better.
For me, I think it's Leicester. And the reason why I'd be most concerned if I'm Leicester is, 1, I think Leicester's going down. And I think that's going to happen. And 2, man, it's concerning when I see ownership. You get a new stadium built, and you just see them be unwilling to spend so that you can avoid relegation. That's concerning to me, and it makes me wonder if they're one of those teams. We mentioned this about Burnley a couple years ago. New ownership took over, and they were completely content to just go and rebuild this thing and sell the guys off. I can't help but wonder if at Leicester right now, they're not just going to say, the ownership's not just saying, okay, that's fine, we'll go down to the championship, we'll sell guys, we'll rebuild from there and get back up and maybe spend a little bit of money, but let's pocket some cash from having this new stadium here. I can't help but wonder if that is the case. If Everton does get relegated, it would be heartbreaking for the fans and the immediacy. But long-term, what it means is probably you're getting new ownership at that point, right? So everything would blow up to a point where you would have to get new ownership. And that's a big enough club that I think you would be right back up. With Leicester, I can't help but wonder, could they be one of those clubs that gets lost for 5, 6, 7 years in a cycle of not really being able to rebuild because they don't have particularly great soccer people or talent people involved in this process? It doesn't seem like right now. And I think that there's part of me that looks at this and says, man, I should have seen this coming, because it was Maddison, it was Vardy, and that was it. And if Vardy scored a goal, Leicester City won. And if Vardy didn't score a goal, they lost. We had to know eventually, Vardy was going to fall off. And I just thought they would have people behind him and have some level of a succession plan. And it just seems like Leicester has no plan whatsoever. Whereas Everton, there are good pieces there. They've got some problems. But if you've got to sell off Connor Cody and Pickford and, Decore and Calvert-Lewin and all of those to spend what you're going to have to spend to make it in the championship, maybe they end up, in one of those teams that gets cycled around in there too for a little while. Because look, there other teams that have been in the championship for a long time used to be big clubs as well, right? Mm-hmm. So Leeds was a big club, and then look how long Leeds wasn't in the EPL. You've had Villa, who is a big club, and look how long Villa wasn't in the EPL until just a few years ago. Sunderland, right? That is a team that has been a long time since they've been at the top flight of English soccer. So you don't want to see yourself get caught there. And I can't help but think Leicester City is one of those teams that maybe they're 17,000 person stadium. Maybe they're just okay being at a championship level.
It's a strange one, Leicester, because they really had an opportunity to build on when they won the Premier League and strengthen and become and move up to that next level. And I know they've got a relatively new stadium, the King Power Stadium, I think it is. And you'd think they could build on that to increase the capacity, but all seemed great at Leicester. There was no talk about money troubles, financial troubles, and then it all sort of seemed to start going wrong. Where the owner got killed in a terrible helicopter crash right outside the stadium. The players, Kasper Schmeichel was one of the first on the scene. and the ownership got passed down to his children. Now, what they've done with it, I don't know. But all of a sudden, they couldn't buy in the last couple of windows because they got no money, and it kind of came out of the blue because they got the new stadium, because they've got. They're a solid enough club, as are Everton, but they're a solid enough club to bounce. They've bounced up and down from the Premier League, so they know what it takes. I guess it could. I just fear for Everton in the fact that it could be a shock to them, and it seems poisonous. The atmosphere, everything seems poisonous about Everton at the moment. Certainly with the fans and the ownership, team doesn't look that special. It's just they need a new stadium. The stadium's sort of old. It's one of the traditional stadiums that's fantastic because it's traditional, but it does need a revamp. And I think plans are on hold now because of the state that they're in. They were going to build. There are plans in place to build a new stadium. I just see Everton being one of those teams that just could get sucked into the lower tiers like Sunderland did for so many years. I fear for them. But I could see Leicester, West Ham thinking, well, here we go again. Let's roll the sleeves up and get back in the Premier League as soon as possible.
Point number 9, Chris. Target man. International break right now. So normally we do one player we're targeting to have a big match week this weekend. When we get back for international break, give me one player you're targeting to improve or to make an impact on the end of this season.
I think it's going to be a shootout at the end of the season. I've gone a bit route one here. I've gone a bit obvious, but it's out of two. I was thinking, who should I go for? Should I go for Haaland? It's going to be the Arsenal Man City shootout, I think, from now to the end of the season. But I watched Saka the other day, and he's so good. He's exciting. What I really like about Arsenal is they don't spend too much time passing the ball sideways and backwards needlessly. They'll look forward first, and they don't, like I say, they don't just kill time on the ball, just waiting for something to happen. They're dynamic, and the guy when Saka gets the ball at his feet, he's unbelievable, and he's scoring goals. He's only got 12, which is about half or less than half that Haaland's got. But I think with confidence growing, I think he's going to be scoring more. I think his confidence is only going to get better and better.
My target man's going to be Calvert-Lewin, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. The reason why is he'll be healthy. He was expected to come back this past week against Chelsea and had a bit of an issue in training. It looks like he's had some injuries and maybe some mental health issues. And from the way that Sean Dyche just kind of laid this out is he's tried to come back while he was still hurt and play anyway, and he's really injured himself beyond that. And so he's having to relearn what to do with his body and to listen to his body about injuries. And he's kind of doing that right now. But he should be healthy. He should be fine during this international break. And Everton has had opportunities for goals. They just haven't had someone that can finish. Story for 2/3 of the Premier League, I know. Calvert-Lewin can finish, though. And so I think that he'll be the guy that has a massive impact on what happens, especially that bottom half of the table that's all jam-packed so close right now. I think Calvert-Lewin's going to end up being a guy that just has an enormous last month and a half of the season. All right, point number 10, Chris. Crystal Palace to let his club to make a change at the managerial level. Where does Palace go from here to replace Patrick Vieira?
Well, I was quite surprised. Not absolutely amazed, but I was quite surprised at the timing because I think Palace is a team for me, even though they haven't won since Christmas, which is obviously relegation form, but they're still sitting. It looks like they're doing okay, but because they're still sitting 12 for so many teams below them who aren't scoring either. They're talking about Roy Hodgson. So if it was me, I'd have held on to Vieira, to be honest. They're talking about bringing Roy Hodgson back in. I mean, they sacked him to bring Vieira in, so that doesn't make sense for me. That's a backward step. I would go for someone like Steven Gerrard. I think he'd bring some energy in there. I think they've got some exciting players, so I think Gerrard would connect with them. I know it didn't work out for him at Villa, but it worked out in a big way at Rangers. So I'm not sure I wouldn't just write him off because it didn't work out at Villa. There was obviously something great that happened in Scotland, and I think he could get those exciting forwards firing and bring his energy and what he brought as a player. Assuming he brings that as a manager, as a coach to the team, he wouldn't be a bad pick for me.
Yeah, look, I think Gerrard should be the guy that they should go with as well. And the Vieira thing was interesting to me because I'm like you. I was surprised. You're 12th right now. Ballpark, that's about where Crystal Palace normally is. Now, they'd gone, I guess, 4 matches without a goal, 12 matches winless. So it's not like it was going well with Vieira. But here's the thing. When you start reading the different local outlets there around London and around in England and, the different soccer blogs, you find out that I guess everyone's saying exactly the same thing that's reporting on this, which is Vieira would not yell and scream at his team and get fiery with them. He wanted to gently try to encourage them to get better. And then there was, I guess, a coffee where one of the owners had coffee with Vieira and had a concern that Vieira was getting depressed about what was happening, as opposed to being fired up and wanting to change things, that it was bringing him down. And there was a belief at Palace that if he can't encourage himself, how's he going to encourage his team to be able to turn things around? So I think this is a weird situation because I don't think he'd done enough to earn getting fired. But when it started going poorly, apparently his mental health kind of declined and his mood declined with that. And they just thought he's not the guy for this. I agree completely, though. Steven Gerrard needs to be the guy. They're talking about Hodgson. They're talking about there's another guy that they've been talking about as well. And I cannot remember who it was, his name, to save my life because it's live right now. Frank Lampard everyone around Frank Lampard has kind of tried to float his name out there. For gosh sakes, don't hire Frank Lampard.
Arsene Hoodle.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, maybe that's who it was. But I don't understand why in the world you don't just go hire Gerrard, especially if you want somebody who's hard-nosed to be on that sideline. Steven Gerrard's going to be as hard-nosed as anybody in the game. So to me, it's the perfect fit. It's a great spot for him. And you're not looking for, I think maybe he learned his lesson with the Tyrone Mings thing there in Aston Villa, but I think that he really is still a fantastic manager. And to me, it's the obvious choice that you go with if you're Palace.
Yeah, I think so. And if they're worried about Vieira and him not being tough enough with his players, and I hadn't heard that. That's interesting to hear. It's really interesting considering he was such a tough player. How he was, if he's gone all meek and mild with his players and having trouble coping himself. But yeah, Gerrard's going to be the opposite, and he must have learned from whatever happened at Villa and learned from his mistakes there. Yeah, he'll come in and shake them up and command respect just from what it is as a player. Command respect immediately. A lot of young players there who've obviously seen him, looked up to him as youngsters when he was playing. So yeah, I think it'd be a great fit for them.
All right, final point, Chris. Point number 11. We usually do match of the week and the upset pick of the week, but again, international break right now. Will we see another EPL manager get fired during this international break?
It wouldn't surprise me at all if Brendan Rodgers. We heard that Brendan Rodgers had fired. It just doesn't look good, does it? They've no wins in I think 5 games now, and just completely on the slide. Doesn't look like they're going to score. It's Maddison or Harvey Barnes if they're on it, and they're so patchy. It's like so many teams can't score, but it's not looking great. And I've got Leicester. To go down now. So I think, I think Rodgers is going to be next.
Yeah, I got to be honest. The fact that they hadn't fired Rodgers already makes me think that they don't care, and they're just going to ride this thing out until the end of the season, and then we'll see what happens. But I do think that, I think Brendan Rodgers is going to be fired, and I'm 50-50 on Conte. Do you think Conte's back still with Spurs at the end of the international window?
I think he will. I think only because Levy doesn't want to pay him any money. And I think interesting with Conte and what the dressing room think about him. No, there's been no rumblings, has there, about the players getting upset about him or whatever. So there's a couple of things at play there. And I think Rodgers could well go. I mean, having said that, if Leicester are so tight for money at the moment as well, then they won't be wanting to pay Rodgers out either. So, there's that argument against him being fired. But I think if they want to keep any kind of pride about them and show a bit of fight about them, not just say to the fans, look, as owners, we're just giving up and accepting that we're going to get relegated. I think Rodgers should be the next guy.
That's Chris Carroll. I'm Will West. We'll be back with another Starting 11 next Monday, 3:05 Eastern Time, right here on YouTube.